Let's begin working with the scene and show how to work with materials within inside that scene. So what we're going to do is File, Open. Let's go to our demo suite. Let's take a look at the chess set, and there are two chess sets available. Use the one with image maps and hit Open. Now again, I'm going to give myself a little bit of room, and then I also have to associate my video cards properly. Okay, now we drag that down and hit click here. Now we have our chess set that's opened up. As you can see, there's multiple materials and a white background. We can again recenter our viewport. Now, all of the materials are listed in this big long list on the side, and they're all represented by little triangles off this main node. It's kind of difficult to work with them that way. And so what we have is a material picker that will allow us to click and isolate each material individually. So if I wanted to click just this red chess piece, I click there and I can see the materials called red set. If I click over here in the background or on the floor or on the different pieces, I can quickly jump to those materials and work with them. Now if materials are hidden behind other materials, you can use the middle mouse button and it'll bring up a list that will allow you to select them. So even though there are multiple materials and objects stacked up, if I middle clicked, I was able to bring up a list and jump directly to the material that I wanted to edit. Let's take a look at a tan chess piece here. Now we'll see here that it's got a lot of different parameters, and it's a glossy material, and we can adjust the specularity and roughness and thin film interactions and bump and normal maps and opacity. But what I'd like to look at is right now is it's got a image map set as its diffuse channel. So anytime that we want to use a color image and use it in Octane, that should be set to an image type. If we are using a black and white image, so like a bump map, we want to turn that into a float image. That will save video card RAM because it will take and only load it as a grayscale image, and that's all that's needed for a bump map anyway. Whereas if we were using a normal map, we would want to use an image type. That will use the full colors, and it'll use more video card RAM, but it'll still use all of the colors. If we wanted to change this image map, we can click this little button that says Load New File. And again, I'm going to go to the same directory of the chess set, and we could use the same image file that we use for the black chess set. Or we could use even one of the bump maps for either of the sets if we wanted to. I'll change it back to the beige. So that allows you to quickly change into other image files and load them and see how it looks on the model. There's also a scale button that will allow you to change the scaling of the texture to get various different effects. I'll bring that back to 1. You can also change the gamma of the texture itself. And we could adjust all the other parameters and see what the material looks like. We could change it to a diffuse material or change it back to a glossy, and adjust the specularity and all the different parameters to change its appearance. Now if I wanted to work on this red piece right here, just for giggles, I'm going to turn it into a specular material, a glassy material. Let me get a little background behind it so it looks kind of cool. One of the neat things about working interactively is we can change the index of refraction, and we can see exactly how the refraction changes. So you might actually find an artistic index of refraction that looks better. Even though it's technically not accurate, you can move it around until you find something visually that's pleasing, and that would be difficult to do in a traditional renderer. You can also change the color of the glass by clicking on the little RGB spectrum box, and we could set it a number of different parameters. Now I've reset this chess scene, and I'm going to show you an example of how to create a material using the node editor. And so to do that, I'm going to work on this red piece, and I'm going to create a unrealistic material just to show you the example and the power of nodes. So down in the graph editor, I'm going to right click and I'm going to add 3 textures. I'm going to add an RGB texture. I'm going to add a Gaussian spectrum, and I'm going to add a checks texture. So this is a checkerboard pattern, and we're going to create 2 colors. Now I'm going to add another texture that's going to allow me to mix those together. And then I'm going to make a material, which is a glossy material, which is I'm going to connect together all of these materials. Now what just happened? I clicked on the glossy material, and I get a Octane Render preview ball that will allow me to see the material isolated outside of the scene and to continue to tweak it. But if I click on the textures, that doesn't happen. We don't get the material ball. And those are controlled by these buttons right here. And if you see enable, disable viewing of texture nodes when selected, I'm going to enable that. And now when I select these nodes, I can see each individual texture. I'm going to change the scale and size of my checkerball. I'm going to also change the color of my RGB spectrum. The Gaussian spectrum is a great way to adjust color. It's controlled by a Gaussian distribution of wavelength of light, so you can change the width of how wide the spectrum is, and then where the wavelength is, and you can get some beautiful colors this way. And then we have this mix texture, which has 3 different inputs. I'm going to take the checks texture and put it to the amount. That's going to control the mixture between these 2 colors. And then we've got a mixture between those 2 colors, even though it's ugly. And then we have this mixed texture. I want to connect it to this glossy material. The first triangle is the diffuse channel, so I'm going to click it there. Now we click on the glossy material. We see that the glossy material is indeed glossy and that its color is controlled by this node mixture that we have here. I know that the 4th triangle over is the red one. I'm just going to connect those together. Now click here. And now we have that complex material on the red chess piece. Now, in order to further adjust these nodes, I'm going to turn off these 2 buttons so that when I click them, I get the settings over on the node inspector, but yet I can still see the chess scene. So I could adjust, let's say if I wanted to adjust these and make the checkerboard pattern much bigger. In fact, it's a little difficult to see since the material is so glossy, so I'm going to turn the specularity down. And then we could also go and change, let's say, the colors. And that's how you could procedurally make a complex material that takes up no video memory. If you'd like to see a great example of this, again, open up the chess set that's labeled procedural, and you'll see how all the marbles and all the materials were created using complex nodes, and that would be a great way to study to see how you can make some complex materials. But hopefully this will give you a little more comfort in how to connect together a material and explore and figure out how you can do very complex and neat materials.